It's the only trip I've been on where I actually did fear death.
Turn around and get in your car and get the hell out of here.
Tourism could become a bonanza.
It's like they want absolutely no trace of any human being ever being on this planet before they showed up.
He had a whole bunch of bumper stickers printed up. Land of no use. I've got a few of them here.
They are well-intentioned people working in the government.
They should at least keep our roads up and give us access.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Backcountry skiing is a combination of hiking and skiing. It takes place in undeveloped, remote, snow-covered terrain away from any groomed ski slopes and lifts. There's nothing quite like it. It is clean. It is pure. It is complete freedom.
And the first time I got a pair of skis was when I was 3 years old or something. My dad took me out there. So skiing has been a big part of my life for a very long time.
Dan skied between my legs at North Star probably when he was 3 years old. We rented him skis and boots, and that's probably the first time I brought him skiing.
When my parents got divorced and I was away from my dad, skiing was a way for me to feel him, to connect with him. I carried that, that passion with me all throughout my young adult life and even now.
It's glad I introduced you to skiing because something that you learned earlier, how to use that as a vehicle to cope with difficult times.
In the summers, my dad took us on backpacking trips in the Eastern Sierras. It got me accustomed to spending long periods of time in the high alpine and walking all day with a heavy pack. That's about the same time I got introduced to backcountry skiing. Backcountry skiing is the perfect mix of what I was raised on with my dad: skiing and backpacking.
And so over the years, I've backpacked in the summer and then ski toured in the winter, but I thought combining the two would actually be the next level of ski touring.
So Dan Noakes calls me up, I answer the phone. The first thing out of his mouth, he goes, "Hey Joel, do you want to traverse the Frank Church Wilderness?"
It's one of the biggest, remotest wilderness areas that we have.
It's just desolate, rocky mountains as far as the eye can see.
You got to be really mentally tough. In the winter, in a remote place like the Frank, there's just no easy way out. You're committed.
And so I thought, what better way to celebrate ski packing than to traverse the Frank Church Wilderness?
In the wintertime, from west to east, we'll do it on ski. We'll be able to ski mountains that no one's ever skied before.
One of the most wild places in Idaho in the winter on skis.
I get really quiet. I go, no, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible.
The Frank Church is really appreciated in Idaho. A lot of people will explore it through the Middle Fork or the Main Fork of the Salmon, usually on the river.
The Frank Church River No Return Wilderness sits basically in the middle of Idaho. Greater in size than the state of Delaware, it's the largest contiguous wilderness in the lower 48. It was officially designated as wilderness with a capital W in 1980 by Congress.
We have hardly begun to tap Idaho's potential as a summer playground.
2.3 million acre national forest wilderness with the Middle Fork and the Main Salmon, National Wild and Scenic Rivers. I mean, it just had incredible package.
There was nobody in the world, I think, that loved those mountains more than Jim Collard did. And he not only carved a living out of that land for himself, I believe that he once employed as many as 250 people at the Sunnyside.
Furthermore, there are no mining operations within the proposed study site.
And they are making it so difficult, they make it so expensive by having to adhere to all their requirements that you just can't mine. A small miner is out.
He had a whole bunch of bumper stickers printed up. Land of no use. I've got a few of them here.
Wilderness is part of public lands, and without public lands, Idaho certainly wouldn't be what it is.
Tourism, already a good income producer for Idaho, could become a bonanza for our state as it has in many of our neighboring states.
Well, we've done everything we can to preserve this country, and when they tell us we're not environmentalists, they're talking to the wrong people, because it has been our backyard. We've taken care of it like anybody does, their own home ground, but we still want access to it. And if they're going to have the Green Gestapo and the police state, they should at least keep our roads up and give us access.
Start of the Frank Church Traverse.
Bye, guys.
Love you.
Love you too. I'll keep in contact.
Say love you, Dad. I will, Dad.
I have zero friends to say, hey, come with me to the ski tour. So I knew that this trip would have to be solo.
You have to dial down your whole level of activity to a point where you're paying attention to the fact that you really can't get hurt.
It's winter. The cold temperatures, avalanche danger.
And it's not like you can look out and go, oh, there's a radio tower, or there's a town, or there's a road, that's where we're headed. No, there's none of that.
I started my hike at the South Fork of the Salmon River near Penny Springs Campground. I entered the Frank Church Wilderness at the headwaters of Indian Creek, crossed Big Baldy Summit, and made my way to Thomas Creek. Continued to Loon Creek, past Sleeping Deer Mountain, and followed Forest Service Road 86 all the way to Chalice. In total, I would cover 110 miles in about 2 weeks. Total elevation gain would be 30,000 feet. I'd begin in February and end in March.
This is officially the boundary line of the Frank Church. So over this way, Frank Church. And then over that way, not Frank Church. I set up camp early that night. Started a fire. I was able to ski tour and take a lap. That extra time and energy that you spend, hike up and ski, get a run for yourself, super rewarding.
That was an amazing ski down Indian Creek. This is like why I wanted to come here in the winter, was for that, for the possibility of skiing powder in the Frank Church. So I'm so stoked that I got to do it.
I went up to Big Baldy. When I got around Big Baldy, I saw kind of where the middle fork of the salmon was. And so I made my way all the way to the middle fork of the salmon, and that was a really, really hard day because it's a complex array of drainages and ridge lines that you have to contour and then hike up and then contour down.
I made it to the middle fork. That was awful, to be honest.
That's when I was kind of doing my research to what is the weather going to be like, where am I going, what's the elevation of the next couple of days.
The next morning I checked the weather, found out that a storm was coming through. My friend texted me and warned me that the high where I was going was only going to reach 8 degrees. I started to really worry about my safety.
It's a fine line between thriving and surviving. And when you cross that threshold into the surviving territory, that's when you can go downhill super fast. I have a kid at home, I have a wife. There was too much at stake for me to say, I don't want to take my chances. I want to come back safe. So because just things were unknown for me, that's kind of, I was freaking out.
I was thinking this weather was too cold for what I had. I didn't have enough food to wait out the storm, so I called Walt from Arnold Aviation to come pick me up.
It was an awesome trip. I may or may not be back to finish it, but I may just call it here and say that was it.
Then he took me home. I was about halfway done at that point.
As a mother of a child who's 3, and I think that's part of like the mental struggle and like why I like really have to gear up. I want him to complete it successfully, but more than all of that, like I want him to be safe. When I'm primarily taking care of our son, like especially while he's on these trips, it puts me in like a pretty vulnerable position. It is high risk and, you know, things happen. I try not to think about it too much, I guess, to be honest. Every time he leaves, I just say like, you can go as long as you come home. That's my like main stipulation. But knowing that he's like totally enjoying himself and it's like everything he had hoped it would be is the most fulfilling thing to me.
There was just kind of an uneasiness that I felt when I was home. And then it came to a point where I said, okay, like, I can finish this. I can finish this. And even if I don't want to because it's uncomfortable, I'm gonna do it. And that's when I made a decision to go back. I booked a plane flight with Arnold Aviation, and because I actually chartered the whole plane, my family was able to fly out to Thomas Creek with me.
Whoa.
Hey, Mom, why? Just look.
Mom, why did you always touch Mom?
Really glad my family got to fly out here. Just, it kind of involves them more. They can partake of the process, see what it's like out here.
So going back, starting at Thomas Creek all the way to the finish line, that's about 60 miles or so. And so I thought it would take me anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 days.
As I return to the Frank, I reflect on the consequences of its wilderness designation, which echo like ghosts of the recent past.
The soldiers were the first ones to mine that in World War II. You could get drafted by the military and serve your draft notice at the mine. That mine produced over 85% of all the tungsten and antimony used in World War II. That the United States of America probably would have lost World War II without that mine.
You're never bothered by the Forest Service. They would help you out if you got into trouble. They'd bring groceries in for you if you needed it.
You know, as my friend Sandy said, the Forest Service was your friend, and it was regarded as that for decades.
The Forest Service, until probably in the 1960s, it began to get a little different. Nobody wanted to be a forest ranger in Big Creek because, you know, there were enough codgers around Big Creek, and they knew that they were not liked. And Jim, I was in the cabin, their cabin there, one time having dinner, and this guy knocks on the door, and it was a guy that was now the district ranger. He'd just been appointed. He says, "I hear you don't like Forest Service people very much." And Jim says, "By God, you got that right, sir." And he says, "Oh, okay, well, I just want to introduce myself." He says, "Well, fine, turn around and get in your car and get the hell out of here." And we just went, "Yeah." Yeah. So that was the attitude.
The Forest Service showed up one day and said, "Everything here is going to be wilderness, and we're going to take your land away from you." Jim Collard was getting kicked off of his mining claims by the Forest Service, who basically told him, as you read some of the documentation, that he's mostly using it for a hunting camp, that he's not actually mining. And that didn't work because they hired some independent geologists who went back there and verified that there actually was up to 3 ounces of gold per ton, which is a world-class claim.
Well, Jim didn't like the Forest Service because of their high-handed attitude toward the mineral rights that were legitimate.
Well, okay, well, you got a claim back there and you can mine it all you want, but you can't use that road. We're not going to let you drive to it, or you can't haul supplies to it.
I mean, you couldn't punch new roads in. You couldn't use certain vehicles if they were so large that they required widening of roads.
So they brought in big, huge rocks as big as those chairs and put them, and they just made it wide enough so you could get a four-wheeler through it, but not a car or a Jeep. So they limited access in that regard.
If you can't access your mining claims, you basically don't have a mining claim.
The people who have inholdings, patented homesteads, or patented mining claims weren't kicked off their land. There were restrictions on what could be done on adjoining lands that belonged to the public, to you and to me.
When they went up and burned the buildings, on the McRae mine up on Elk Summit, he was pretty upset.
It's like they want absolutely no trace of any human being ever being on this planet before they showed up.
And just piled it all up, and they left the outhouses.
He filed a lawsuit on 3 claims. The judge awarded Jim Collard over $550,000 because they said that It was egregious as to how the Forest Service had deliberately stripped him of his rights.
I think they are well-intentioned people working in the government, working to preserve our landscape, and I'm glad they're there. Some of this comes out of the Great American Experience, and the whole national focus was conquering the wilderness. And now we've got a little of it still left where people can learn what it's like to sleep on the ground instead of on a mattress. For instance, when you go there, you're not allowed to use wheeled vehicles. You're not allowed to use mechanical devices. I mean, we could regard it as a reservoir for a different kind of experience that's largely been lost. They're pretty precious.
I still had, a hike of probably about 13 miles of the Middle Fork Trail. And then I landed to Loon Creek Airstrip.
I made it to Loon Creek Ranch, and this is where I have to go meet up with Cache Creek Trailhead.
The place that scared me the most with that second was I had to cross the ridgeline of Sleeping Deer.
So this is the point where I have to start going up, and it's really steep, and it's just white out.
And that was a steep ridgeline that I thought had some potential avalanche risk. But I was actually able to cross that ridgeline pretty easily. I got down to this road that went from Chalice all the way to Sleeping Deer. And it's a road that's surrounded by wilderness, but the road itself is actually not even considered wilderness.
A little funnel system.
You can explore more with ski packing. You can go deeper with ski packing. You can experience places that not too many other people can experience. If you go and explore the Frank Church, you feel a sense of wild that you haven't felt anywhere else. It's kind of like a wonderland for people in Idaho.
I've reached the border of the Frank Church Wilderness, so this is the other side.
I felt satisfied when I'd finished. I don't know exactly what it was, but maybe it was just the sense of putting down a goal and then not giving up, and it was done.
I am happy that my son had the opportunity to pursue some of the passions that he has now, and I don't think it would have been possible had we been not been separated. Maybe, I don't know. It's like if Dan hadn't been separated from me, would he be the backcountry skier he is today?
Tourism could become a bonanza for our state as it has in many of our neighboring states.
And I look at him and I tell people, I show him and I say, when I grow up, I want to be Dan. He really is designing his own life. He's fulfilling every philosophy that I have but didn't 100% realize and fulfill. I'm watching a son do that. To me, that is beyond fantastic. And I have so much joy just watching his videos and just watching his life. I just hope that he can continue on and pass that on to his son and those around him.
This is Frank Church, your United States Senator, speaking to you from Washington.
He's a great son, and I love him.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting,